So I want to start off with some ideas that may or may not be completely apparent, and also some ways of attacking problems. And I think that there's a way that we can kind of put all of this together into a category of blends and additives. Now, start with the additives. Reynolds Advanced Materials, great place to get smooth on products. If you're in the United States, if you're not in the US, then there are other distributors, which I don't know. By the way, topic tonight was suggested by Dub Sativa, so thumbs up on that one. It was a really good topic. So Reynolds is a great place to get all of the smooth on products. Now, generally, you're going to be looking at the EcoFlex series and the Dragon Skin series, and these are kind of your mainstays when it comes to blending silicones, or what I'm going to call blending silicones. EcoFlex and Dragon Skin are both platinum cured silicones, so you can be sure that they're body safe. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that you can blend silicones together. You can actually take some of the EcoFlex line or even the Dragon Skin line and mix and match. So, if there was a particular firmness that you were going for, you can actually take, say, the EcoFlex 0020 or the 0010, which these are going to be super, super soft silicones, and then mix them with, say, the Dragon Skin 20 down here. Now, you got to keep your proportions correct, so you have to keep your part A versus part B proportions correct. But you can play with the proportionality of the Dragon Skin to the EcoFlex. And if you take some Dragon Skin 20, which is an A20 firmness, and you mix it with, say, the 0020, you can play with the firmness of the silicone and dial it directly into what you want. So you're not limited to just 0030 or A5. They've done a pretty good job of covering all the bases, but one of the things that I like about it is that this is kind of where we start getting a little bit technical, and I don't want to go completely off the rails here, but you can tell the difference between the Dragon Skin and the EcoFlex series. The EcoFlex series is very thin, the 3000 centipoise. That's what CPS stands for, is centipoise, and it's just a measure of viscosity. 3000 centipoise is very thin. It's more like oil, like a thick oil, rather than honey. Whereas something like the Dragon Skin series, which are all in a 20,000 centipoise range, these are very viscous and very thick. So, while they may have a particular firmness, they may not have the viscosity that you want. So you can actually blend some of these silicones together, say the Dragon Skin 20 with the EcoFlex 0020 down here. And what you're going to end up with is something that is a firmness. If you did it in equal parts, it'll probably be about an A5, but your viscosity will be somewhere around 12,000 to 14,000 centipoise. So you can actually blend some of these silicones together and adjust things. Like here, they have an EcoFlex 5, which is their 5A or A5 silicone, but it only has a 1 minute pot life, which is, well, it only comes in tubes. So yeah, that is even a non-starter right there. But if you take, say, a 0020 equal parts with Dragon Skin 20, you're going to end up somewhere in that same range, but you're going to have a pot life of, 25 minutes there and 20 minutes here. So you'll still have a pot life of about 20 minutes, but you'll be adjusting the viscosity. Anyway, now everybody knows what I mean when I talk about the 00 series versus the A series, right? You're talking about the firmness. 00 series is almost always going to be softer than the A series, and a smaller number is going to be softer than a bigger number. So a 0010 is going to be softer than a 0050, and a A10 is, or 10A as they put it on here, A10 is going to be softer than A20. Generally speaking, I wouldn't go above maybe the Dragonskin 20. The Dragonskin 30 could be useful in certain scenarios if you've got a very thin piece that you need more structure and support for. That extra firmness will give you a little bit more structure to it. So, there's a room for creativity here where you can take different materials and combine them together and blend them in a way that gets you what you want. I don't know that Smooth-On has ever talked about this. I haven't seen any videos where they talk about combining or mixing or blending silicone, but it is something that I do in order to get the specific firmness that I want with the viscosity that I want. I don't really care too much about pot life and cure time. I do try to stretch my pot life a little bit, but there's another way of adjusting that if we need to. So yeah, what I'm talking about is taking the properties of the silicones that you like and combining them in an original way that allows you to create the product that you want. Blending is a way of doing that. Now, of course, always take a moment and do some experiments, small batches. And also, this is a trick that I've learned, created for myself, is I create reference firmnesses. I have a library of silicones that come from the same mold and have the same volume that are specific firmnesses. So like I've taken the 0050 and the 0030 and created samples that go into my library. And so when I'm blending silicones, I can use those as reference points and say, okay, this is 0030 and I've mixed these two silicones together and this is what I've gotten. Where does that fall compared against that 0030? So yeah, I don't know. Part of me says that everybody should do this, but on the other hand, not everybody is quite as neurotic about things as I am. And so this is kind of the way I've approached it. I like having control. I like repeatability. And these are the ways that I create that for myself. So we talked about blends. But then I also want to talk about additives, because there are ways of changing the properties of silicone that you can adjust the silicone to do what you want it to do. And, one of the things that you can do is if you've got let's say you've only got some Dragonskin A10 and you need that to be softer. Well, you can get what Smooth-On calls slacker. And this is also known as a deadener. It reduces the firmness of the silicone. But depending on the proportions that you use, you can change the properties of the firmness properties of that silicone. Now, it's not free in the sense that it is going to affect the cure time, the pot life, and generally extend them, but it is also going to, I hate to say this because it's going to sound, people are going to take it the wrong way. It is going to slightly weaken the silicone. And when I say slightly, it is imperceptible except under extreme testing circumstances. But that is something that you have to recognize is a possibility. If you overdo the proportions of your slacker, then you can end up with silicone that will weep silicone fluid, and you'll get a product that is tacky and will leave oil stains on paper. And yeah, it's better to have the right silicone, but if you're in a position where you need to deaden the silicone that you've got or reduce the firmness of that silicone, then slacker is a way of doing that. Yes, I say weep. And what that means is that it just kind of sweats, maybe is another way of putting it. It releases that silicone fluid from the matrix of the silicone itself. So yeah, you can call it sweating, you can call it weeping, you can call it a lot of different things, but it's basically releasing some of that loose silicone fluid from the matrix of the silicone itself. So yeah, just be careful about how you do it. I think you can go up to 10% before you start having problems. I think now it says that Slacker will not exude silicone oil, but my experience has been that that's only the case if you stay within the parameters that they recommend. You go outside of those parameters, it's going to exude silicone oil. Now, then we're going to talk about the viscosity, because viscosity is going to have an impact on what your marbling looks like. It's going to have an impact on how your silicone flows into the mold. I was talking with somebody this afternoon about it, and one of the issues that they were having was that their silicone, even though they were doing two different colors, they ended up blending inside the mold, and we were trying to figure out what was happening. Now, I think the problem is actually the shape of their molds, but viscosity is something that is going to change the shape of your marbling and change the, I guess the way I'd call it is marbling versus feathering. Thinner viscosity is going to have more feathery marbling, whereas a thicker viscosity is going to have more of a chunkier marbling. But viscosity has to do with the flow properties of the silicone through and out of the cup and into the mold, whereas firmness has to do with the final cured firmness of the final product. So viscosity is how it is before it goes into the mold, and firmness is what it is when it comes out of the mold. Now, so we've talked about Slacker, we've talked about blending silicones. Now I want to talk about the viscosity, and there are two ways of doing it. You can go with something like Thivex, which is a thickener, and this will thicken the silicone. And when I talk about thicken the silicone, I'm talking about, the difference between water versus honey. Thivex takes the silicone and increases the viscosity of it. It makes it thicker, less runny. And that's what thickener is going to do for you. It's going to change that viscosity. One of the uses for a Thivex and thickeners is that you can use it to thicken the silicone to the point where you can brush it on to a master model. And that's how I make my glove molds, is I use a thickener to increase the viscosity of that silicone to the point that it will stick on a vertical surface. Now, in very small quantities, it can change the viscosity of the silicone so that it makes it easier to get the results that you're looking for in terms of marbling and things like that, to reduce the mixing of maybe multiple colors of silicone as they're pouring into the mold. On the other end of the spectrum, we have silicone thinner, and that will reduce the viscosity. So this is going to flow more like water than standard silicones. So again, you can play with that viscosity using either Thivex or thinner to change the properties in a way that's going to get you what you're looking for. Then we're going to talk about pot life and cure time and how to adjust those if you need to reduce the cure time. And I can think of a few reasons to do that. Say when the temperature is a little bit low, say you're under 70 degrees, then having a plat cat, what they call plat cat, which is a silicone accelerator, will speed up the curing process. It'll cut the curing time as well as the pot life. So that's something you have to keep in mind, is that not only is your cure time going to go down, but your pot life is going to go down as well. And it'll freeze that silicone, cure that silicone that much faster. The other end of the spectrum is slow gel, which is a cure retarder. It slows down the curing process. It'll extend your pot life and extend your cure times. That can be useful in times where your temperature is a little bit high, say when you get up to about 80 degrees, or you got a very fast curing silicone and you need to slow it down so you have time to get it into the mold after you've got to get your vacuuming done, you've got to get your blending done, you got to get your pigments into your silicone. All that takes time, and so a retarder is going to give you more time. So we have adjusted a lot of the parameters. We've adjusted the firmness either by blending them or using a deadener or slacker. We've adjusted the viscosity by using either Thivex or a silicone thinner. And then we've also changed the cure time either by adding Slow Joe or Plat Cat to either slow down or speed up the curing process. When you can start playing with the properties of the silicone and not just taking what Smooth On gives you, then you're able to really bring this into exactly what you want it to be.